Mr. Shepherd's going to sit there with you. So if we've got some tables that are only have one or two, if you guys will combine with some other tables, that will allow us to have some good discussion. Tonight we do have a few people that are out tonight, but we want to go ahead and move forward with this process. Hopefully we've got lots of folks joining us online tonight as we're streaming this meeting. I do want to say thank you very much for being here tonight. Just to tell you my own personal thing here of why I have a mask on, I am not sick, but my husband has COVID, so I'm going to keep my mask on tonight and stay away from you. So if I'm not coming and talking to you personally, it's not anything personal. I'm just trying to keep my distance just in case I get COVID in the next few days. So thank you for being here. We're very excited about where we are in this process. We're excited about what's going to happen tonight. We hope there's lots of great conversation, lots of input from our community and our staff, parents, everybody that's here. We have lots of experts in the room. We're going to introduce them in just a few minutes. But first we want to get started. One of our chairpersons, Chris, is going to come and kind of get us started with our work that we're going to do tonight. So, Chris.
It's not going to cooperate. Alrighty, here we go. Here's our first slide. This is like the thing we keep talking about every time we get together because this is pretty much why we're here. So we're anticipating 7,500 homes to come into the area within 5 years. Our overall campus capacities will be maximized within 2 years, and we're going to have 6,000 students in 5 years. If you want my personal opinion, we're going to hit these numbers earlier based on what I've seen, what the teachers are saying, what the principals are saying, what's happening. I think that the only reason we get to this 2-year number for the capacity is because they've gotten really creative about where we're going to put our kids next year. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to make it happen. So this is the big reason we're doing all this, and this is why we really need things to move forward. We need everybody to vote. We need everybody to participate. All right, here's our agenda for tonight. Check that. These are our meetings that we've had. We're on meeting number 4. This is our last meeting before we take it to the board. In our prior meetings, we went through how we got to those numbers, and we talked about those numbers themselves. We talked about how the bond process works. We talked about our priorities in our last meeting. We all filled out forms. We had our discussions within our groups talking about what things were priorities, middle schools, elementary schools, IT, you name it, we talked about it. And then we're going to tonight go over the recommendations and what the master plan is going to be. And then in greater detail, here's our agenda for this evening. We have our introductions. We have the financial clarification. We have the review new school openings by population and year. We have rankings from last month, options and condensed groupings of needs, discuss options in groups and report, vote on options, and then we'll talk about what's next.
Okay, so I get to make introductions, and since we've been doing this a few times now, most of you know people that are in the room. But just as a reminder, we want to thank our experts for being here to guide us through this process. So from WRA, our architect firm, we have Jeff and Mike and their team. I know they have several people here tonight on their team, so thank you guys for being here. We have Drew from Pogue Construction who's here to lend us some expert advice and input. And then we also have Christian Merritt from Live Oak, which is our financial advisors for the district. And so he will also be giving us some information tonight about our financial capacities and where we stand with our finances. So that's where we're going to start first. Just going to tell you why real quick we put this in the slide presentation for tonight because last time we met, there was some discussion at some of the tables about the district going in debt this much, and if the housing market crashed, and what would we do if we owed all this money, and those kind of things. So we've already talked about what bonds mean, but Christian's going to go back over what it means to approve a bond package and how that does not mean that the district goes into debt, but instead it's permission to do things in the future to be able to pay for things that we can afford when we can afford them. And so he's going to kind of go over that today, so we make sure not just that we clarify it for the people in the room, because all of you probably know that, but to arm you with answers to questions, so as you go out into the community and talk about these things, you have the answers for people who have questions about that. So, Christian?
Thanks, Dr. Knowlton. One thing, just to add on that a little bit, there's one thing about understanding this stuff as we're talking in here and you're seeing the slides and you're hearing me talk about it and it makes sense and you can internalize it. But again, when you're out there talking about it, it can be a little bit different. So I want to make sure that if y'all need any help with that or anything comes up, that y'all reach out to Dr. Knowlton and get me the questions. If I need to help you with the wording of the answers or whatever it might be, let's make sure that we keep that communication going, okay? Okay, so FAQ number one, so, oh my gosh, we're going to sell $500 million. And the big thing to realize with this is that there's an authorization for an amount that y'all are going to select. The authorization only allows for that project amount to be sold over the next, call it 10 years, okay? And the way that works is that every single bond sale that were to take place for needs at that time are the only dollars that require any kind of payment. So there's no, it's almost like a line of credit if you want to think of it that way. You're not paying on that unless you actually tap into it and you utilize those funds. I think the biggest thing to realize too is that we're not going to tap into that unless we absolutely need to. So one of the big things too, the board at each bond sale period, at each time we go to sell part of the however much gets authorized, they have to authorize each individual sale. Okay, so they do have input on that every single time there is an additional sale. A huge thing that's been a directive to me since the very beginning is when wondering about what does the capacity look like is when are we going to sell? And we're only going to sell when two things are happening at the same time. And those two things are that the buildings are needed because kids are coming, and that the second piece, very important, that we can afford to pay for those. Okay, so some of my tougher conversations as a financial advisor is saying no, or we need to figure something else out, or we need to do something smaller right now. But that is the two things that are driving any time that we sell whatever the authorization is going to end up being. Does that make sense? Okay. So how can we afford this much? And basically, the biggest thing is that just like the anticipated needs for these future buildings are based on extreme growth, we're seeing it, so is the capability to pay back the bonds associated with building these facilities. Because if you look here, one INS penny this year generates $136,000. Well, if the growth that continues that we're currently looking at, that same one penny would generate $732,000 in the future. So as we're taking these out, we're keeping the tax rate the same. As the values grow, the ability to pay back the bonds that would be required to build the facilities for the kids that are coming would also grow at a somewhat relative pace. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it, obviously, but it's something we'll be tracking very closely. But that is what provides for the ability to pay those bonds back. Okay? Does that make sense? I think those are the three biggest things that we wanted to hit on. And there will be a lot more of this as we go along as well throughout the process. But is there anything else tonight specifically that anybody wanted to clarify that's going to help getting out there? No? Okay.
Okay, go ahead and come up here. Brad's going to talk a little bit about this slide, but before he does, I want to do one little thing for you. So all of my math people in the room, I want you to take 3,444, get that in your head, and subtract 2,821. And somebody tell me what number you get. What? 3,444, 2,821. 623. Did everybody get that number? So 3,444 students is the number of enrolled students we have today. 2,821 is the number of students we had on the last day of school last year. So from the last day of school to today, we've grown by 623 students. Also, before Brad gets started, if you'll notice what he's going to talk about, our projected number for this year total is 3,335. And in January, we have 3,444. So, just let into your...
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Jeff, would you like to add to that?
Just one quick thing. The next 5 slides have some numbers that will be very hard to see on the screen. We printed those and they are on your table.
Yeah, so what's on your table right here starts with this slide right here. And so one of the things that Dr. Knowlton pointed out, and so everything that's on the table is what you're going to see also on the slides. So, but it's just there to help you and to put it in your hand when you're in discussion here in a little bit. That way you can flip back and forth to the slides if you want to discuss it. But if you'll notice that the projected population is at the top. It's hard not to reference the years. Christian just even mentioned, hypothetically over 10 years. One of the things that is the growth is coming faster than the years are coming. And so, it's hard to even talk about years. Well, this is what it's going to look like in 2 or 3 years, and this is how many schools we're going to need in those years, unless it comes sooner. So you'll notice that the population is at the top, and we want to draw your attention ultimately to that population. As Dr. Knowlton mentioned, we're over 100 students more already than we were expected to be at the end of this year. And so that means 2023's at the end of 2023 is already going to be wrong, right? And so these are our latest projections that we have, and we're already further along. And so if you'll notice too, as we're looking at the bond packages here in a minute, and you'll think about elementary numbers and how many elementary schools are needed in 7 is what we've discussed, is you'll see, and we've discussed, so Josephine is opening, that's the green one, and then we're going to try to get another one as soon as we can if and when the bond passes, and then another one, and so just keep that in mind as you see that. And then also, based on conversation, this is something that I just wanted to point out to you is it's a change, and so we want to be as transparent as possible and point these things out. That part of the consensus after last meeting was the high school addition that needs the expansion of the high school. Instead of doing it in 2 different times, it's lumped into 1 down there. So just want to be as transparent as possible with you guys, and you'll see the list here in a minute of why that was the case. The majority of everyone in the room said just do it all at one time, and so that's that. Awesome. Mike's going to come up and discuss with you the next slide, which is the next page in your handout, which is the ranking of all of the things that you guys ranked last time.
Okay. This is the numbers that we as a group put together and ranked last month. Again, if you can't see the board, simply look at the one on your table. At the top of the list are elementaries 4 and 5, closely followed by the new middle school or middle school number 2. High school addition number 1 falls in at ranking number 4 there. New transportation bus maintenance facility goes next. Land purchase for the bond program. renovations to McClendon, and then I'm going to skip on down to, it says renovations at Neesmith. I think, Dr. Knowlton, there's discussion, those are going to be together to where you don't create any hard feelings, east side or west side, that type of thing. But both those should happen at the same time. High school addition, the cafeteria is number 8 there. Technology and security upgrades, district oversight, bond construction. We've got to get ahead of this going forward. District maintenance facility and warehouse. Number 11, allowances for off-site road sites, utilities, and new remote sites is next. Number 13 is new elementary school. Number 6, additional parking for schools and athletics. High school addition, CTE, the dual college center phase, number 1. High school addition, number 2. New administration facility, and I'm not going to read all those. You can see those. So again, this, as the committee last month and the 3 prior meetings, that may not be exactly what we all voted for, but this is what the compilation of that goes. So very important that we all follow through with this going forward. May not be exactly what we voted for, but this is as a committee, so we're going to need everybody's positive input going forward on that. What I missed? So the committee will present to the board in February, I believe the 14th, I believe is what it is. The board will have a month and they'll make the decision going forward. So again, these are only recommendations from the committee. The board will make those final decisions. So some of these may change. That's just the way things work. So any questions on that? Yes, yeah. So stadium upgrades, number 18, and the indoor workout facility will be different propositions. Thank you, Brad. By law, and I'm not sure when that happened last year sometime, those have to be voted on separately, which I think in our case is a great situation. So if somebody is not for that, at least it doesn't destroy what we need going forward. But those will be propositions, what, B and C, I believe, or A and B, however that is. So those will definitely be voted on separately when people go to the polls. Mr. Miller.
While we're there, the next slide is going to show condensed where we put several of the items that belong together, like all the elementary schools or that. There is a parking number that was mostly for the stadium parking, so it should probably be a green line too, but you'll see the stadium number is a 17 now. When you turn the page, it'll say stadium and parking, and it's about 19, and that's the difference, is that it's including the 1.5 for the parking and a couple of lines up. So for those who are going to catch me on my math, that's it's just didn't have a green line on that part. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay.
Okay, so let's go on to what everybody really wants to know here, which is what are our choices? What are we looking at tonight? So the first thing we did for an option 1, and this is also on the page that you have on your table, this is everything. So if there are people in here that want us to do everything that was listed, everything that somebody said, they want to do Proposition A that has everything listed that we talked about, and they want a Proposition B with the new stadium, and they want a Proposition C with an indoor workout facility. If we did all of those things, those would be different propositions on the ballot, but the total amount of money would be $649 million. That would be what the bond would be for if we went out for that. Like Jeff said, you can see that we've grouped the things together. So 4 through 7 is all listed together, and their amounts are added together so that we can kind of put them all on the screen, and you can see how they would be grouped together in an explanation. Still have those individual items that you did when you went through and ranked, but this gives us kind of a better picture of the different categories that we would have in each of the bonds. So there's option 1. That would be everything that was discussed in these meetings by the community. Or we also have, the wrong way, we also have, was that right? Oh, so then we needed to come up with an option 2. So where do we start? What do we do? It's not for Tanya to go in and just pick what things she wants on the options. It's not for any one person in the district to just say, hey, we want this, this, and this. So we took how you rank them as a committee, and we just started knocking them off. Okay, so if we just start from the bottom, from the thing that was ranked the least or the lowest on the rankings, and we started taking them off and counting what is needed in the district. And we got to the point where it was going to be new elementary number 7 was going to be the next thing on the list. And so when we started looking at that one, if we were to take that one off, we would be back here in a year planning for another bond the following year to be able to start construction and get going. So we'll be back in the same spot within 2 years. That would also be for our middle school. If we were to take a middle school off, we'd be back here in 2 years. It takes about 2 years to build a middle school. Then you've got design, 8 months, 10 months, something like that. And so we would be back here again getting ready for that. So those kind of things we left on there. So we stopped right there. We knocked these items off and came up with our option 2, which is, and what Jeff did on this slide is he left those things listed on here but grayed them out so that you can see what was removed from the group. So you'll see that on this particular one, he grayed out the gym. So we took the gym, the larger Coliseum type gym off. He took the 9th grade center off, and then he took these things down here off as well. And then we also took the second proposition for an indoor facility off. And so we have $487 million for these things, all those campuses, educational spaces that we need. And then we left the Proposition B for the renovations and additions to the stadium and the parking, and that comes out to be $506 million for an option 2. Are there questions about either option? Okay, I think Mike's going to come and lead us in some group discussion.
Perfect. Okay, so we're going to do this for another 15 minutes, and what we're going to have is just talk about these 2 propositions, or really anything that's been discussed tonight. So if you have a question about the bond financing, any about the growth, about any of the projects that we kind of ranked, or these, we're going to just have a group discussion for 15 minutes. I can be negotiated to 20 minutes if needed, but we're going to start just as a group and just talk about kind of what you want to see. After this, we're going to do some individual voting. So, but at this time, we just want to have each table give 15 minutes to talk about. If you have a question, we have all the resources in the room to answer any of those questions. Yep. And then after we finish this group discussion, we'll have a person stand up again and talk about kind of where that group kind of ended up. So, but at the end, we will do some individual voting. So we're going to take 15 minutes to just discuss. And again, if you have a question, raise your hand, and we'll come over and answer it.